Fear No Evil, Chapter 6. Podfic's Notes. This chapter contains the Room of Enlightenment. Instructions on how to skip it can be found in the notes. Rhodey's soul spotted the green-haired woman out of the corner of his eye as he strolled into the plaza. She sat on a bench next to the fountain, pretending to be reading a magazine, but her eyes followed him. The burly man sitting next to her was doing a better job pretending to be engrossed in his phone. They were likely after the briefcase of stolen goods he carried. He had no idea what was in the briefcase. He knew better than to ask questions of his employer. But he knew that if he failed to deliver even one package, then he'd die. As a teenager with a barely useful quirk, his only use to organized crime was his desperation and his expendability. Speaking of his barely useful quirk, Rhodey whispered to the pink bird sitting on his shoulder, "Pino, we're pulling a number 12. Pino saluted by bending her wing to her head, then took flight. Rhodey smirked and tossed a salute at his two tails, just to let them know they'd been spotted. Then he placed the briefcase handle between his teeth and scaled up the side of the nearest building. An angry shout came from behind him. Then a metal ball impaled itself into the wall next to his head. Around the plaza, people screamed and fled. Holy shit. Most villains wouldn't create such a stir in a public location. It attracted heroes. He'd expected those two to try and jump him as soon as he headed to the bad part of town, not publicly use their quirks in a tourist area. Just what was in this briefcase? Grunting, Rhodey jerked his arm away in time to avoid another projectile. As yet another metal ball narrowly whizzed by his ear, Rhodey contemplated letting them have the package. But his employers would murder him even more surely than these two would. If his father hadn't abandoned his family to run off and join that Humarise cult, then Rhodey would have been in high school right now, not carrying illicit packages under the threat of death. No, he couldn't die. He had two younger siblings squatting in a broken-down, abandoned trailer who depended on him to survive. Rhodey heaved himself over the edge of the roof with a groan. He lay flat on his back, both to recover his strength and to make a smaller target for those balls. After a few minutes with no more attacks, he poked his head up. The muscular man produced a massive metal ball an order of magnitude greater than the others. The green-haired woman raised her glowing bow and shot it. Steel slammed into the building, causing the entire tiled roof to slide. Swearing, Rhodey leapt to his feet. He ran to the edge of the building and hopped to the next roof just in time. This area had many flat-roofed buildings clustered close together. The underworld called it the criminal's sidewalk. Below, the duo followed him, leaving more screaming and fleeing tourists in their wake. While dodging between two heavy metal projectiles, Rhodey noticed something much smaller land on his shoulder. He grabbed it and turned it between his fingers. She'd shot a tracking device at him. Clever, but not clever enough. This would be useful. Pocketed it with a smirk. "You think you can track me? Bitches, you're in my backyard now." Pino swooped down from the sky. She rattled off a series of chirps only he could understand. Rhodey said, "Thank you, Fuzzball." Running along the edge of the roof, Rhodey leapt. He landed on a ledge, then hopped down to a dumpster. He tossed the tracking device into a garbage truck. Then he jumped in the back of the pickup truck Pino had found for him. Crouched low among the boxes filling the back of the truck, Rhodey watched as his two tails chased after the garbage truck going in the opposite direction. He smirked. Let them dig through the waste looking for him. As soon as he was confident they were gone, he put his hands on his hips and proclaimed, "This is the day you will always remember as the day you almost caught Rhodey's soul." Pino shot him a withering glare at his bad movie reference. Chuckling, he leaned back against the box. "Relax, Fuzzball. This ride will get us to our destination early. Maybe we'll earn a bonus and then I'll finally have enough money to fill your bottomless pit of a stomach." She attacked his hair. He batted her away, yelping, "I know, I should never comment on a lady's food intake. Ouch! I'll buy you a mango after I get paid. You know how much you love mango." After delivering his package, Rhodey was eager to head home and check on his siblings. But first, he received a text from his boss asking him to come to the bar to receive a bonus for a swift delivery. "See, Pino?" he said as he pushed open the door. That job must have been exceptionally valuable to have such powerful villains chasing after the package. It was a risk, but it paid off. There will be mangoes all around tonight. His gaze fell on his employer, standing behind the bar counter polishing a glass. Boss, I swear you look younger every time I see you. Is that a new suit? It looks very dashing. So grateful to have such a handsome and generous employer. His boss actually chuckled. Rhodey, I've never been so glad that I hired you. Rhodey blinked, confused at this unusual friendliness. Was the package really that special? Nah, it's because I can collect on the ridiculous bounty Humarise posted on you. Glancing over his shoulder, the boss called out, He's all yours. The green-haired woman stepped out of the back of the bar. Rhodey tried to run, but a burly partner had snuck up behind him to cover the door. The man had trash sticking to his shoulder and a bad-tempered expression. He picked Rhodey up, then slammed his head into the floor. Rhodey struck a knob on the wood, a bruise blossoming around his eye. The woman shot a projectile at Pino. She screamed as she dropped to the floor. Rhodey cried out in shared pain. As the man injected a needle into his neck, Rhodey screamed, I lied! You suck! Your sole strong point as a boss was always your willingness to hire someone underage. Now that I think about it, using child labor for potentially fatal criminal jobs is not exactly a mark in your favor as a human being. Even as his lips went numb, he finished, You look older every time I see you, and your new suit makes you look fat. Rhodey woke up to darkness all around him. He couldn't see or hear. The air felt cool and he smelled mold. He jerked at his hands. He'd been handcuffed to a metal chair. A sudden pain ran down his arm. He screamed. He knew this sensation. Someone was hurting Pino. Fuzzball, where are you? He cried desperately. A door opened, letting a crack of light into the room. The green-haired woman stepped inside wearing a red robe. She said, Your curse has been removed to a location where it will not taint the eyes of believers. My curse? Do you mean Pino? My quirk? Please don't hurt her, Rhodey whispered, dazed and in pain. Someone hit her. I felt it just now. The woman shook her head. What a dreadful curse you have. It causes you so much pain. Then surely you must understand the message of Humarise that quirks are the cause of all suffering. You're the ones hurting me and Pino. Don't make it sound like someone else's responsibility. But if you didn't have a curse, then we wouldn't need to purify you like this. The uncursed ones live a life of luxury under our protection. In this hypothetical scenario, you're basically saying that I get kidnapped whether I have a quirk or not? What's wrong with you? Now that the phantom pain had stopped, Rhodey forced himself to calm down. Who are you, and why did Humarise kidnap me? My name is Barros. I brought you here under the orders of Supreme Leader Flecked Turn as a punishment to your father. I'd say nice to meet you, but it's not, Rhodey snorted. I should have known my deadbeat dad would be causing me yet more trouble. What did he do this time? Barros spoke in a grave voice. Not only did Eddie Soul attempt to escape, he involved the Messiah in his foolishness. A serious sin. Escape? Rhodey frowned. Didn't my father run off to join your crazy cult? He left a letter praising Humarise. It seemed like an open and shut case, according to the police, anyway. Calmly, Barros said, Dr. Soul's services were conscripted by Humarise. He worked for us under the condition that we would not harm his children. Since he defied us, we brought you here. An odd, nearly hysterical exhilaration filled Rhodey. It was all a lie? Oh, neat. My dad didn't abandon me. Except we're now both captives of an insane cult. That sucks. Barros said, We're not insane. We're going to save the world. Rhodey supposed he ought to be more diplomatic, but his head hurt too much. It must be the after effects of the drugs. What are you going to do to me? You'd better tell me. If you don't, then I'll throw up on you. That's not a bluff. My stomach gets very easily upset when I'm terrified out of my mind. Barros said, You are currently too tainted from the sin of the outside world to enter our holy compound where the Messiah lives. It will take several days to purge all foreign food and drink from your system. Rhodey blinked. I understand that you don't want foreign food or drink in my system, but will you be feeding me your own, less sinful food? Please? Surely you have something lying around. I'm a small boy. I don't eat that much. Barros tilted her head. After a moment, she said, I will bring you food. Something about how she said that made him think that if his appeal hadn't worked, he wouldn't have eaten at all. Rhodey swallowed. What will you do to me after that, since you brought me here to punish my dad? He carefully did not mention his younger siblings. If they'd somehow not fallen under Humarise's gaze, then he wouldn't draw it there. Roro and Lala had enough food to last them a week. If he didn't return after that, no. He had to return, no matter what. I am not important enough to be granted that information. Barros's eyes examined him. You are very young. I hope they will go easy on you. Slumping down in the chair with a rattle of handcuffs, Rhodey muttered, Me too. Toshinori had been staring at a map of Otheon for the past hour. His eyes hurt. His head hurt. He was still suffering from jet lag. A sneeze built up in the back of his throat. He might have picked up a cold on the plane. Normally, he was very healthy. Maybe the lack of sleep was getting to him. He'd been having nightmares about the time when he'd been held captive by Humarise. When he thought of what they might be doing to young Midoriya, his fists clenched around his marker. It snapped in two, spraying ink over his fingers. Watch it! Aizawa leapt back with a yelp. I'm sorry, Toshinori said. Aizawa patted his shoulder. It's okay. We're going to find our kids. Aizawa had been noticeably nicer to him ever since the personal information All for One had let slip about his past. Toshinori wasn't sure if he appreciated it or he found it embarrassing. Maybe both. Time to get his head back in the game. Toshinori wiped off his hands with a tissue, then grabbed another marker. He crossed off a neighborhood. I checked here, too. No hidden underground compounds or suspicious activity. Aizawa said, I spent the day at the local Humarise temple. I've erased quirks until my eyes bled. They think I'm a savior. I'm confident they're not lying to me. They don't know anything about a compound full of quirkless children. Toshinori pinched his forehead. The lower ranks never know anything. It was worth a try. Aizawa asked, Have you received any messages from Humarise taking your successor hostage or demanding a ransom? Toshinori turned to look at his fellow hero in surprise. Of course not. Humarise would never take someone quirkless hostage, nor would they ever release a quirkless child for any price. They're a bunch of fanatics. Oh. I'd been assuming they targeted 2 boys important to you and All for One as hostages. If they simply grab any eligible children, then it's a bit of a coincidence that they found 3 quirkless boys of roughly the same age at the same time. Aizawa rubbed his chin. Do you think I might be looking for the same kid as you? I don't know his name, but he was short with curly green hair, green eyes, and freckles. Toshinori's heart skipped a beat. The description was vague enough to potentially be a coincidence, but he knew immediately it wasn't. Charging in to save a hero from being kidnapped was exactly what Izuku would do. His heart nearly burst with pride. He opened his mouth to tell Aizawa all about the many virtues of his wonderful successor. From the doorway, All for One said, that couldn't possibly be my son. He's half Otheon and looks almost exactly like his other parent. He was kidnapped while visiting me in Japan. So 3 quirkless children in the same city aren't as big a coincidence as it might first seem, since my son isn't a native. Toshinori's brain short-circuited into one long, Fuck! He'd nearly spilled his successor's identity to All for One. He leapt to his feet and whirled around, screaming, Don't sneak up on me like that! All for One rolled his eyes. I wasn't sneaking. I simply returned to our hotel at a normal walking pace after a productive day gathering information. What, are you scared of me? He smirked. When it came to All for One finding out Izuku's identity, Toshinori would freely admit to being terrified. He had to cover this up, and fast. Sorry, Aizawa, I'm not looking for a kid like that either. My successor is tall, buff, and blonde with blue eyes. I trained him to be as similar to me as possible, since he'll become my future replacement. Toshinori knew that All for One had a low enough opinion of him to believe he'd actually do something so messed up. Sure enough, All for One snorted. Keep on doing that. It sounds like the 9th won't be worth much. Toshinori merely raised an eyebrow, serene in his confidence that his old enemy was very wrong. At least since All for One's son didn't live in Japan, if Junior tried to overthrow any governments, then he'd be Europe's problem. Toshinori felt a little ashamed of the thought. As far as he knew, this kid had done nothing wrong. The poor boy had just gotten stuck with an awful father. Aizawa shrugged. It was merely a stray thought. Humarise keeps the kidnapped children in the same place, so we still all share the same goal. All for One, you said you have new information? Hisashi pushed open the door just in time to hear Aizawa say, Do you think I might be looking for the same kid as you? I don't know his name, but he was short with curly green hair, green eyes, and freckles. By his quirks, that wasn't All Might's successor. That was Hisashi's beloved son. Even the recklessness of rushing in to save Eraserhead fit Izuku perfectly. Did this mean Hisashi had caused his only child to be kidnapped with his plan to obtain erasure? Hisashi carefully boxed up that thought and put it away until after he confirmed his suspicions, and after he had time to think up a justification for why it wasn't his fault. As soon as he was alone, Hisashi resolved to order his spies to dig up Aizawa's police report. First, Hisashi had to divert his enemy's suspicions away from his treasured child. That couldn't possibly be my son. He's half Otheon and looks almost exactly like his other parent. Hisashi went on to cook up a story about how his son had been visiting him from Europe. He needed to prevent All Might from realizing that it would be oddly coincidental to have 3 quirkless boys in the same place. The blonde buffoon nearly jumped into the ceiling in his surprise at Hisashi's arrival. The idiot was even rattled enough that he admitted his own successor had blonde hair and blue eyes. Hisashi filed away that information to pass along to his spies, too. He felt quite smug that All Might had confirmed all of Hisashi's lowest expectations by turning his successor into a copy of himself. An All Might ex-be riddled with inferiority and self-doubt would be laughably easy to break. Conversely, Hisashi felt more positively inclined towards Aizawa after knowing he would risk his life and his hero career to save Izuku. How strange that the first person he'd found tolerable in a long time happened to be a hero. In his musings, it took him a moment to realize that Aizawa was talking to him. All for One, you said you have new information? Hisashi smirked. Since the heroes are useless as always, fortunately I've had a productive day making contact with various friends who owe me favors. Toshinori gritted his teeth at All for One's smug words. It pained him to rely on All for One's criminal contacts and his illegal favors, but with his successor's life hanging in the balance, he would do anything. That wasn't even an exaggeration. Allying with One for All had been near the bottom of the list of things he would ever even remotely consider, yet here he was. Stop bragging and spit it out already. What did you find? All for One said, A few years ago, a local drug addict sold her quirkless toddler to Humarise. Aizawa and Toshinori exchanged identical disgusted glances. Tapping the table, Aizawa asked, Does she know where they took the child? No, and she's dead, but the pimp knew how to contact the seller. We're going to offer another quirkless child to lure them out. Toshinori slammed his hands down on the table. We most certainly will not. All for One rolled his eyes. I meant we'd lie. Are you familiar with the concept, you Superman knockoff? Cheeks flushing, Toshinori settled back down in his chair. Given it was you, forgive me for wondering, he muttered. All for One said, Given that I found this information myself, I wonder if I even need you. Aizawa said, If you're here, then I assume you do. Oh, he needs us. Toshinori's eyes narrowed. He could smash through Humarise's defenses with raw power, but he's not too good at rescuing hostages. He needs someone to save the children while he attacks. He's never cared about collateral damage before, so he's not too good at preventing it. He's a walking missile. If he went in alone, he'd probably splatter All for One Jr. into tiny pieces across the pavement, and then he'd have caused the death of a blood relative for the second time. All for One's nostrils flared. It was subtle, but Toshinori knew he'd landed a hit. With a mock cheer, the villain said, You're nasty for a hero. You started this. Stay away from my past from now on, and I'll stay away from yours. Toshinori stood up to his full height and locked gazes with the villain. In your eyes, do heroes have to take crap without ever fighting back? All for One said, Yes, that's why I never wanted to be one. Toshinori snorted. We don't want you either. Tell that to my brother. So the last person who wanted you to be a hero has been dead for over a century? Have you considered getting over it? Toshinori asked with mock sweetness. Out of the corner of his mouth, Aizawa hissed, "He seems to have a victim complex." Toshinori nodded. A supervillain wants to be the victim. It's almost funny. All for One sighed melodramatically. Eraserhead, I thought we had something special. I feel like you've been extremely hostile towards me ever since I admitted I was planning to steal your quirk and then kill you. Do you think so? Aizawa snorted. Ever since you admitted that being your friend would result in you zombifying my corpse, I've been actively trying to make you angry. Is it working? No, for some reason I don't feel upset when you insult me the way I do when All Might does it. All for One sounded surprised about this. It's like watching an adorable black cat try to claw me. I think I might actually like you more now. How fascinating. I came here to tell you that I've arranged a meeting with the Humarise trafficker in an hour. Be ready. As soon as All for One left the room, Aizawa leaned over and hissed, How can I make him angry the way you do? I'm getting desperate here. Toshinori shook his head. I don't know what to tell you. It comes naturally to me. The Room of Enlightenment looked oddly empty. The space was barely bigger than a walk-in closet, with pure white walls. Everything around here was white. It was starting to drive Izuku crazy. A white, egg-shaped pod rested against the wall. It looked like a bathtub, except with a round lid on top. Izuku got the message immediately. They were going to shove him into this box like a dog being crated. That wouldn't be fun, but it wasn't as bad as what he'd feared they would do to him. Honestly, he'd take it over another group hug session, and these cultists didn't even seem to view that as punishment. Fortunately, he'd never been claustrophobic. It made him burn with rage to imagine them doing this to someone who was afraid of enclosed spaces or the dark. Flecht handed him a jar of Vaseline. Take off your clothes, and then put this over any open wounds. Izuku stared. He felt extremely uncomfortable with this request, but with Eddie and his son as hostages, he had no way to refuse. At least Fleck didn't watch him strip. The cult leader turned away to open up the egg. The inside was filled with water. Okay, this explained why they wanted him to take off his clothing. Maybe this was a good sign. Surely they couldn't leave him in the water too long if they didn't want to physically harm their precious messiah. Or maybe the water would be ice cold and give him hypothermia. He had no choice, regardless. Flecht helped him into the tank, if helped was the right word, and placed an inflatable pillow under his neck. Even with the Vaseline, Izuku winced as the water touched a blister on his foot. The salt content in this water must be very high, given how easily he could float on his back. Contrary to his expectations, the water was pleasantly warm. Earnestly, Flecht said, During this time, many receive divine inspiration. I hope you will be guided. Izuku stared back wearily. If you didn't have a hostage, I'd guide my teeth to your neck. Flecht closed the lid, plunging him into total darkness. Izuku's body floated. He couldn't see anything. He couldn't hear anything except the sound of his own breathing and a drip coming from somewhere. He couldn't even feel anything except the constant water. That was the most unnerving part. Still, this wasn't as bad as he'd been expecting during the walk over. It actually felt a little relaxing. Go figure. While stuck inside the pod, Izuku composed plans for escaping and countering Flecht's quirk. Reflect. Such an interesting ability. How did it identify danger? Would it protect Flecht if he swallowed a sleeping pill? If the sleeping pill worked, would his quirk still protect him after he fell unconscious? Did it reflect indirect damage? Would it fail under a strong enough force? He needed to run some tests to come up with a solid plan. Already he had numerous useful ideas, but they all required resources he didn't have. It was very hard to come up with a practical plan without knowing what condition Eddie's son would be in and where they would keep him. Izuku couldn't leave without the other boy. His thoughts echoed loudly in his head. A chorus of anxieties about what Humarise might do to Eddie and his son kept creeping in no matter how hard he tried to focus on practicalities. Time must have passed. He felt thirsty. Then even that sensation faded away. When he tried to move, Izuku realized he couldn't. Or had he moved and not noticed? He felt like he was spinning in circles like the hand of a clock. Even though he logically knew that there couldn't be enough room, the sensation was so strong it gave him motion sickness. He no longer felt water touching him. Or had he merely stopped noticing? He had an odd sense of disconnect from his body. Even the pain had stopped. Strangely, he missed the pain. It had been proof that he was alive. Boredom and numbness replaced his brief spurt of creativity. He felt weightless. The trickle of water into his ear became maddening. Izuku started singing inside his head to distract himself. He found hero theme songs depressing at the moment, so instead he summoned up memories of pop love songs his mother often played while cooking. Lights danced before his eyes in a mixture of spirals, dots, and straight lines. It felt like he was falling through space. He heard a beautiful symphony, but this time he didn't recognize it. The sound shifted to cheering. Izuku stood on a podium at UA, looking out over a crowd. All Might hung a medal around his neck and told him how proud he felt. He'd won the sports festival. His mother cried as she waved a banner. Light hit Izuku's eyes. The brightness hurt. He squeezed his eyes closed, but not before he saw someone's hand reaching down. They put a straw between his lips. Water sloshed around him. He was still in the tank. He must have fallen asleep. But the vision had been so vivid, closer to a hallucination than a dream. For the first time, Izuku realized that he was thirsty and starving. How long had he been inside this pod? It must have been a long time, judging from the burning in his throat and the pit in his stomach. Maybe even overnight. He sucked up the protein shake desperately, even though it tasted like bland nothingness. When the last drops were gone, the straw pulled back, and the lid creaked closed. "Wait!" Izuku screamed. His arms and legs couldn't move. He had a strange sensation like they'd been cut off. His eyes shot open, but too late. He was met with only darkness. He'd been sealed back into the tank. With a sick horror, he wondered exactly how long they planned to keep him in here. If they were even going to feed him without letting him out, then it could be indefinitely. What if they never let him out? He went into a panic. He tried to pound on the lid of the tank, but his limbs didn't respond to his desperate commands. The overly salty water and cushion wouldn't let him sink deeper. There was barely enough space for him to move at all. It felt like being inside a womb. Despite his best efforts, his will to struggle was sapped away by a sense of profound inertia. None of his senses responded to him. He couldn't even feel the water against his skin any longer. He did not seem to have a body at all. The emptiness terrified him. It felt like dying. He had no idea how much time passed. There might have been another meal, he didn't remember. He didn't like to think about how long he'd been trapped in here. Another vision of All Might came to him, except this time his hero scolded Izuku for getting captured. In a polite but firm way, he asked for his quirk back. Izuku was crying. His tears felt so real. His father came to him next and casually admitted that he'd transferred to America to avoid his useless, quirkless, bullied son, just like Izuku had always secretly feared. Next, his mother told him that it was too tiresome to look after him any longer. Eddie's soul stood before him covered in blood and holding a dead child, telling Izuku that it was all his fault. Reality and illusion blurred together in one long, endless scream. Then even the visions left him. Blackness consumed everything. The constant sense of falling faded away, replaced by zero sensation at all. He had nothing. He was no one. He felt as hollow as an eggshell. He would have begged for All Might to come back and shout his disappointment at him again. Even that would have been better than the unrelenting, unending emptiness. If this was death, he wished it would hurry up and get on with it. This had to end. It couldn't last forever. He clung to that belief until it turned into a hope, until it finally faded away like the mist of a breath on a mirror. Darkness, emptiness, and rage. Dear God, the rage. When the light hit his eyes, Izuku forced them to stay open even as they filled with tears. Pain was a significant improvement over the endless darkness. He had to escape the tank before they could lock him in again, but his arms wouldn't respond. An incoherent wail emerged from his throat. "Everything is okay. I've got you." Flecht's voice. Blue arms lifted him out of the tank and cradled him like a baby. A finger brushed a tear off his cheek. "You have been purified." Izuku trembled, a jumbled mess of fury and shameful terror. Flecht smelled like sandalwood cologne. Izuku hated how much he longed for that smell, for the presence of another person. A tear trickled down his cheek. Then another. Someone was sobbing. It was his own voice. He didn't want to cling to the front of Flecht's robe like this, but he couldn't let go. He'd never imagined feeling so much relief from the sensation of cotton under his fingers. He could feel again. The whole world seemed sharp and bright, as if his senses had been enhanced. "Let's get you dry," Flecht said, rubbing his hair with a towel. His voice was beautiful. Izuku needed it and hated it. Izuku wanted to push the cultist off and take over drying himself, but he felt too disoriented. His body still wasn't obeying his mind. He was a shaking, sobbing mess. He knew only two things. 1. He would burn Humarise to ashes. And 2. He had figured out how to break Flecht Turn's quirk. End of Chapter 6. Omake Time. Omake, you have unlocked achievement. Friendship with All for One. Aizawa, I want to piss All for One off. I'll use my natural personality. Hisashi, you see, I'm a cat person. Omake, All Might continues to be the expert at pissing All for One off. All for One, tell that to my brother. All Might, sure, I'll tell him the next time I see him in the void. All for One, you see him where now? All Might, he told me you lost a fight with a pigeon as a kid and you don't know how to tie a tie. Author's notes. For short periods of time, sensory deprivation tanks can aid relaxation and treat anxiety. Sensory deprivation techniques over longer periods of times have been used as a means of interrogating prisoners, or, to call it what it is, torture. Thank you to A Sleepy Black Cat Yawning for the consultation on the impacts of sensory deprivation. When used voluntarily, float tanks are supposed to boost creativity and aid problem solving, so Flecht Turn may yet very much regret sticking Izuku into one. Podfic's notes. So this chapter dives in, pun intended, to the Room of Enlightenment. Reading this the first time, I was expecting something really, villainous, like a Bond villain type trap thing, but I like that this is really based on a real technique. That this isn't some super mega spike pit trap or something like that, but it's a real thing, and it's interesting to see how techniques that are therapeutic in certain cases can be misused severely for harm. So it's very much a... If you've enjoyed this fic, please take this time to let the original author know. And if you've enjoyed this podfic, please let me know. Thanks for joining.